Hey everyone, it's Strange Michael. I hope you're doing well today. Welcome back for another Ghostbusters review. Of course, I talked about the first two from 84 and 89. I briefly mentioned at the end of the review of Ghostbusters 2 about how the video game here was supposed to be Ghostbusters 3. It has the returning cast, their voices, the characters. You're a new character in the Ghostbusters. It had ideas and concepts that Harold Ramis and Dan Aykroyd had used forever to utilize for their Ghostbusters 3 script that Bill Murray kept shooting down because of his falling out with Harold Ramis. We never got the ideas here made into a Ghostbusters 3 film, despite it being announced for ages since 1989. And it never got made. They decided eventually as a studio, when Sony jumped in, to remake Ghostbusters. And eventually, or originally, it was going to be people like Seth Rogen, which would have been horrible. I can't stand Seth Rogen. It was going to be a Judd Apatow film, which I wasn't excited for either. And then eventually it fell into the hands of Mr. Paul Feig, who made Bridesmaids. And I fucking hate Bridesmaids. I can't stand it. My wife, I have a small story about that. My wife, when we first started dating, had a best friend. And that girl had a boyfriend. And we sat down within the first couple of weeks of all knowing each other, and me meeting my wife and dating for about a month at the time. But I met those other two not too long after that, and we watched a movie called Bridesmaids that they swore up and down was the funniest comedy in forever. And not one time did I laugh during that film. Not one time did they all laugh while we all four watched that movie together. And at the end of the film, I turned to them and said, "What did you think was funny in that movie?" And they just looked at me because they realized after I said that they didn't laugh one time watching that piece of shit movie. And from that point on, Paul Feig had been on my shit list. But then he made a film that eventually became an all-female Ghostbusters movie called Ghostbusters from 2016. And again, this is a straight-out remake of the 84 original movie in the worst possible way that they could have done it. Now, when this film first came out, despite it now being called Ghostbusters Answer the Call, trying to pretend like it's a multiverse film when it's not, or being like a spin-off or whatever they're trying to refer to it as, this is a remake that is truly awful. I mean, truly, truly awful. And when it first came out, I considered it, because I wasn't a big Ghostbusters fan, it wasn't insulting to me the way The Last Jedi was the year after this movie. It's almost like this began the end of Hollywood, you know? Not because of the all-female thing, just because of the people they picked to be involved, to make it and to film it, or to be in front of the camera and behind the camera. However angle you would like to look at this piece of shit travesty train wreck, it's a horrible mess. And even as a non-Ghostbusters fan, I could tell you this is a horrible mess. But I did love it because it was so bad back when it came out, and I watched this more than the Ghostbusters first two movies when it first came out, because I thought it was hilariously awful, man. If you were a crackhead or like a pothead or something watching this, I can't imagine the amount of fun you would have had watching this movie because of how stupid and horrible the jokes and everything were. It's filled with SNL alumni. It's got a few cameos from some of The Office people, because Paul Feig worked on The Office, and I love The Office, so it's weird seeing like Gabe and Kevin in here. But this movie is so misdirected in every possible way. Everything that could be a poor choice for a Ghostbusters film was put in this movie. Every bit of it. I don't even know where to start. I guess I'll go with plot first. Melissa McCarthy and Kristen Wiig used to be really close friends. Kristen Wiig is kind of our main character here, and I think she even did a lot of writing for this film as far as I know. I can't stand her, despite her being hot. Can't stand Melissa McCarthy. I think she was funny in Identity Thief, and that's about it. Can't stand either of them. Melissa McCarthy has never been a leading lady. She should have never been the lead actress, or one of them, in this movie or in Hollywood in general. She's not funny enough to be able to do that, but she is a memorable side character when she does that, like in Identity Thief. She is not meant to be a lead actress, and I'm sick of Hollywood pushing her ass into everything. Essentially, they used to be buddies, like best friends, growing up, and they had a falling out for some reason, and eventually Kristen Wiig finds out from her college professor job, whatever it is, that her colleagues found out that she was attached to a book that Melissa McCarthy has now published that was her and Kristen Wiig's research about the paranormal and their belief in ghosts. And Kristen Wiig basically loses her job over this when she asked Melissa McCarthy to unpublish the book, and she wouldn't. So now she's lost her job, and she goes to visit and address Melissa McCarthy as well about this book. And she finds out that now she's hanging out with like another chick named Kate McKinnon's character, whatever that was, who's kind of a wacko, a crazy weirdo, always flirting with Kristen Wiig type of thing. She's probably the best character in the film, Kate McKinnon's, but not by much. Kate McKinnon is about the only person in here aside from Chris Hemsworth who is a good actor and not just an SNL brainlet, in my personal opinion. But then they eventually meet Leslie Jones, who's like a toll booth worker for a subway. And she gets involved and somehow becomes a Ghostbuster as well. And not in a good way like Ernie Hudson was. Ernie Hudson was just looking for a job. He didn't care what he had to do or believe just to get a paycheck. He just did it, you know? I don't even think he necessarily believed in ghosts when he joined the Ghostbusters in Ghostbusters 1. He just wanted a paycheck. He wanted a job. It sounded interesting. He didn't know if it was a fluke or not, and didn't really know what he was stepping into. And by that time, Ernie Hudson became my personal favorite Ghostbuster. Leslie Jones is horrifically, obnoxiously loud and annoying. She's as bad as Melissa McCarthy about that. Both of their performances are horrible. Kristen Wiig is always fucking dancing in every scene. Red Letter Media talked about that in their review for this film back in the day, and they're not wrong. Every scene almost, someone is fucking dancing, and it's usually Kristen Wiig, and it irritates me to death. These four women are supposed to get along, and they're supposed to be friends by the end of it and whatever, running this company that they eventually buy out the original Firehouse from Ghostbusters movies, and they run their company, Ghostbusters. Well, they don't even buy it out, now that I think about it. They just continue to insult it, and their Ghostbusters headquarters is above a Chinese restaurant that Melissa McCarthy loves. But they insult the original Ghostbusters house, the Firehouse, which was bizarre. And then you start to see cameos from people like Bill Murray, who was responsible for this film, and even had the gall to go in interviews and talk about how this was a good cast and a good movie and a good director. Bill Murray, I love you, but you're a fucking idiot. He is. I love What About Bob? It's my favorite of his movies, but he's a fucking idiot, period. Bill Murray shows up in here, Dan Aykroyd, Harold Ramis had already died like 2 years previous to this, and yet the film doesn't even try to tribute him. And Ernie Hudson's in here for like a brief 2 seconds, a shorter cameo than the other two had, basically. But they're not playing their respective characters from the first two films. They're just showing up in here as like a taxi cab driver, or like Leslie Jones' uncle. Bill Murray's supposed to be kind of like a skeptic Bill Maher character, you know? And that's really it. And they're all bad in here too when they show up. It's not good. The film is... I'm convinced there was no script when they made this movie. I'm convinced that there was a concept, a general concept, that eventually would have these four female Ghostbusters fighting kind of ghosts in New York City involving subway issues, and then also having a stupid version of Annie Potts' character as a secretary, who is Chris Hemsworth, who is the best part of the entire film. He's great, he's funny, he's hilariously bad. He is the so bad, it's good part of this film that made it worth watching to me. He's great in it. I really enjoy his perspective and the jokes he makes and how stupid he has to be. I love the fish tank joke that he makes. I think it's wonderful. But then you see other things in this film. Like, again, I said I'm convinced there was no script for this movie when it was made. I'm convinced that this entire film was improv and then they had to go back and reshoot actual story for this. There are I can't even talk. I'm so irritated over this movie. I haven't even seen it in like 4 weeks and it still pisses me off. There were like interviews of Paul Feig, the director, saying that they would have 45-minute takes of improv about shit like sitting at a table for the interview scene with Kevin, the Chris Hemsworth character. 45-minute long takes on these digital shit-looking cameras. By the way, this film looks like trash. It looks awful. It looks like an SNL parody for a higher budget, you know? That's what it looks like the entire film, basically. There are talks about him doing 45-minute long takes of these women who just improv every scene. None of them are funny. Kate McKinnon is the funniest of the group, but she is not funny in here. She's funny in other things. She has like 1 or 2 moments in here that I like and laugh about, but aside from that, the film is utter cringe brought to life. If there was a word to use for this film that's not overused, let's say, it'd be the word cringe. This movie is so cringy, dude. I don't even know what to say about it. I hate it, and I hate it for the fans of Ghostbusters the way I hate Last Jedi for my fandom, Star Wars. It's so horrible that they had to completely remake the whole idea of doing a remake. They never made another one of these. They made a reboot, again, a soft reboot, a requel, whatever, called Afterlife because of how bad this movie was. And deservedly so. This film should have never been approved. it felt like the beginning of the end for Hollywood, like I said. Because, again, the next year you had Last Jedi. The year after that, I think we had Justice League, if I remember correctly, which wasn't the same mistakes as this movie, but the same TV look to it that this film has began to become a trend with a lot of Hollywood films that were horrible. Things that broke up fandoms and stuff. This was the beginning of that shit. And it's an insult. Now, I guess I'll move along from the bad acting, the bad writing, the bad behind-the-scenes bullshit that was going on. The film looks like shit. Like I said, it's horrible looking. One thing I will give it is that the CGI is amazing in this movie. It really is. There's no practical effects pretty much at all in the film, but the CGI is awesome. The proton packs don't even sound as good as in the original film. One thing I think is a very unique touch that I will give Paul Feig, or maybe the studio, or whoever had this idea, some props for it. They shot it in a way that the entire film will have black bars on the top and bottom of the screen, but when the proton packs, for example, are used, or a ghost comes up on the screen, they actually have it jump and overlap over those black bars at the top and bottom of the screen, and like if the proton pack is shooting, you'll see it wave over the black line like it's coming out of the movie. That was kind of cool. I know this was shot for 3D, but even if you don't see it in 3D, it's kind of a neat touch, man, and when the ghosts come out and they go over those black lines on the screen as well, that's pretty cool too. I really dig that. It has a lot of cool stuff like that in the film, and I love when it's used. That's the biggest thing I still watch this film for. That and Chris Hemsworth and Kate McKinnon when she's actually funny in the movie. But now we have to talk about one of the worst elements, the music. The theme song is barely used in here because there's so much just having people sit around and parody Ghostbusters. It feels like a horrible high-budget fan film. It really does, with a nothing but improv for people who wanted to make an MCU film out of the Ghostbusters franchise. I truly believe that when they were making this, that they thought it was going to be a hit. I really believe that. I don't care if we're talking about Paul Feig or Melissa McCarthy or whoever. They all have this stupid, doe-eyed look in their face, like they think this was a good idea and that they think it was going to be a smash hit because they have the queens of comedy or whatever they thought they were going to put in here. And it is truly so bad it's good. Like some of the moments in here. But it's kind of deviated from that the older I've gotten, the less I like it now. I don't think it's as so bad as good as it is a movie that has a horrible film that has some really funny, stupid shit in it. But it's a long runtime. It's a long runtime. I think it's at least closer to an hour and 45 or an hour and 50 minutes, something like that. And it drags its feet through scenes. It takes so long for certain moments to go on. If you told me again that the 45-minute improv shit was real, this movie proves that. This movie proves that the way the new Goosebumps show proved that AI scripts were already a thing in Hollywood now. This is horrible. I'm convinced they went into it with no script, no concept, no ideas, and filmed a bunch of improv trash until they could get a script. I'm convinced that's what happened. I don't care what anybody says, and I'll stick with those guns until the day I die. Anyway, Ghostbusters, or Ghostbusters Answer the Call, whatever this crap is called now, I feel bad for people who are hardcore fans of Ghostbusters. Because now, after The Last Jedi, the year after this, I know how you feel. In a time where the franchises were being revived, like Terminator at the time, Jurassic World, Star Wars in 2015, to have all of these revivals and then have this come out and be as bad as it was. Jurassic World was bad, but it's not as bad as this. This is insulting. It's an insult, just plain and simple, and it's been completely forgotten. It'll never be talked about again. People will never mention it ever again, aside from people like me still talking about it in reviews and stuff. But a lot of people, when I've seen them review the movies, they just skip this one and go straight to Afterlife, which I think is hilarious, frankly. I never want to watch it again after sitting it through it this time again. It's an insult to Ivan Reitman and everybody. It's horrible. It's horrible, and even that Seth Rogen remake idea wouldn't have been a good idea. It would have been just as bad, if not worse, than this movie, because it would have been the same concept of MCU improv bullshit that doesn't work well, in my opinion. Ghostbusters 2016. If I had to rate this film on a 5-star basis, despite my love for certain moments and certain characters, and even the CGI thing that I think was really cool, this movie's horrible. And I would give it a 1 out of 5 stars, to be honest with you. Usually I give things a 2 out of 5 as a very small token if there's anything in the film I really can't appreciate and like. this film has so much bad in it that it kind of overshadows completely the things that I do enjoy about it. Because those things are barely there, you know. But anyway, Ghostbusters 2016, have you seen it? Do you love it? Do you hate it? I think the answer is very clear there of what you're going to say. Do you wish that we had gotten Ghostbusters the video game made into a movie instead? I don't know. This is a great game. This is a fucking terrible film that should have never seen the light of day, and that's just the case. 1 out of 5 stars from yours truly. Have you seen Ghostbusters 2016? What do you think about it? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Again, let me know everything down below, despite it being so predictable as an answer. I'd love to hear everything. Thank you guys for watching. God bless you all, and goodbye.